I'm going to call this meeting to order, and we're going to add under the road foreman's report, open truck bids. We won't make a decision on those, but we're going to open them so we can start looking at them. And with that, we have the minutes from January 30th.
I would move that we approve the minutes from the select board meeting on January 30th.
Okay, any discussion?
I'll second it.
Okay.
Oh,
Yeah.
right, okay.
Yeah.
Any, all right. Now, any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
And now we have the minutes from February 6th.
I'll move we approve the minutes from February 6th.
Do I have a second?
I'll second it.
Okay. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
I'll abstain.
All right. We have warrants 17 and 17P, the payroll. What would you like to do?
I'll move that we approve the warrants 17 and 17P.
I'll second that.
Okay, any discussion? Warrant 17 is for a total of $127,006.71. And of that, $100,000 is going to the Dummerston School as part of the budget for the school that's voted on at town meeting. We have some fuel payments, some salt for the roads. There were a number of tax refunds, and those were a result of the mortgage companies overpaying. We had GMP electric bills, the sheriff's monthly bill, health insurance for town employees, and our monthly rescue bill. So, any more discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right. We can go down. Are there any comments from the public that, anything not on the agenda? Yeah. Okay. Then we'll go on to our road foreman's report, and we have the annual MRGP annual report and fees. And we're not going to pay the fees right now, but we're just going to approve the municipal roads general permit planning report. And Lee has gone through this and certified that we are all good with this. Road erosion inventory is not complete, but it's planned to be done in July, so.
I will move that we approve the MRGP annual report for the fee of $1,750.
I'll second that.
Okay, any discussion?
Do you want to just say anything about what we have to do, just as far as the road inventory and what's going to take place after
Yeah,
that?
the road inventory, we're working with Wyndham Regional right now.
Okay.
And I would say it might be half done. Our portion is pretty much completed, but it just didn't work out with the weather coming early and those kind of things.
So what this is this is Act 64, where we're going to go and look at all our roads and identify where there's an erosion problem.
Yeah.
And then the town is going to have to go back over the next 20 years, roughly, and put ditch stone and repair the ditches or repair the way they run off. Is that
Yes.
essentially what we're doing?
Yep.
And that's to
And where
comply
they-
with Act 64.
Yep.
Okay. All right.
Okay, any other discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
All right. Okay, and then we can open these truck bids.
Good. Didn't bring my letter.
You know, I left my pocket knife at home, but
Oh.
you know, I do have that history of cutting bids in half, so hopefully just as well.
You gotta get you a mic, Z.
You just have to wear your hearing aids. I'm almost shouting up here.
My daughter didn't buy me any batteries for Christmas.
Sure, yeah. So this is for, you're getting bids for a truck that will be voted on at town meeting.
Yes.
And this is a new dump truck and plow.
Yep, you'd be replacing one.
From,
2010.
yep. Okay.
And this does include the plow?
It has it as an option.
Okay.
We're trying to evaluate whether the plow can last another 10 years or not.
Okay.
Okay.
So do you want us to read the amounts? Or how do you
I
want us
think
to?
that we can do,
What needs to go in the minutes? Anything in particular?
we're going to let Lee take these, and the deadline was for this meeting. Lee's going to take them and look them over, and then at our next meeting,
Comment on them?
or actually, maybe after town meeting, we'll, if it's
Yeah,
approved.
we're kind of hoping to do it next meeting, and then it's going to be in lieu of funding.
Okay,
So then we'll know the amount. The truck orders, they have to place them earlier and earlier in order to get it before next winter. So that's what they want to make sure the town is sort of committed to getting
Okay.
it before they order it.
all right. So, do you have amounts, Casey?
Yep. And do we want to just record who we got the bids from?
Yep.
Looks like ours are the same, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, they
Patriot?
bid 2 trucks,
Okay,
2 different.
okay.
So this is from Patriot. It's a 2020 Western Star 4700 SF. It's red. And the balance due on delivery is $142,122. And there is a used trade-in allowance of $30,000. And because Lee said it was part of what's being discussed, the plow blade is available for $5,750.
Okay. This one's also from Patriot Freightliner Western Star. The cash delivered price of the, well, it's a 2020 Freightliner, model 114 SD, and the unpaid cash balance due at delivery would be $133,723. The plow blade available is the same, $5,750. And the used trade-in allowance would be $30,000.
Well, you guys got lucky because you guys told me that a lot better than I did. I'll tell you that right now. Because this is from Tri-State Truck Center, and it's for a Freightliner 114 SD, and their price is, this customer price before, is $119,842. And if I went through all this stuff, I bet I could find a price for the plow and stuff like that, but I don't, they didn't put it on top, so. And they didn't put it on the 4th page. So I imagine when we go through it, we'll
Yeah.
find out what that
Okay.
is.
So we'll bring, actually, Lee, do you want to take these, or I'll can put them in my truck with everything else that I have? There. Okay, so we'll let you take these at the end. All right, so let's see. Well, I guess that's, anything else, Lee, you'd like to discuss?
No, the state did do a stormwater assessment on the drop inlets over in the West Village, checking the outfall for any contaminants, and everything showed everything was good there, so. That was done last year, and they just got it completed.
Okay. Any other questions for Lee? He's here?
No.
Okay. Let's see. Anything under correspondence for information that you'd like to discuss?
Well, why don't we just, we'll bring up the DRB decision on the gravel pit review. So that was done back in early January, where the select board put the application in front of the DRB for an extension of the SB and the Renault sides of the gravel pit back there. it was a 50-year extension, and that also addressed a right-of-way issue off, I always forget the name of that road. Winterbell. The DRB made their decision within the past week, so they've approved that 50-year extension. So the gravel pits are now extended out 50 years with that right-of-way added to it, and it's in the appeal process right now. There's a 30-day appeal from when they issued that decision. We'll know at the end of 30 days, but there's really been no indication that anybody's going to have any problem, because the landowners who were at the DRB were actually in favor of the application to change the DRB permit. So,
And if the town does not vote in favor of purchasing the gravel pit, then this extension would then be rescinded.
right, contingent upon the town vote.
Excuse me, I
Yep.
couldn't hear. I couldn't hear you, Zeke. What did you say?
I said that if the towns don't vote to purchase the gravel pit, then this decision would be rescinded.
The decision made here.
You can move up to the front row.
Yeah.
Go right there.
Everybody forgot their hearing today.
Or we'll move the tables closer to you.
You can speak a little louder.
So the 50-year approval is contingent upon the town passing the articles in reference to the gravel pit.
Thank you.
Yep.
Okay, should we go, we still have a few minutes. Anything else under correspondence for information? That correspondence for discussion action. Did everyone see the letter from Laurie regarding the changes to the notary
Yes.
regulations?
Mhm.
She was looking for a little wisdom or guidance, but it seemed like you had a good thought.
I did. So what happened is the way the law changed, our public notaries will no longer be covered by our municipal insurance. So therefore, our notary had concerns about her own personal liability if she notarized anything. So what I had suggested is she look into a private insurance, because I think that's a very important service that we provide to the town residents. You know, even if it's something you only use once a year or something, it's just one of those things that I think is a valuable thing to provide to the residents of the town. You know, so I talked to her today. She just renewed her license. It's good until, well, her license is good for whatever the term of the license is. She's covered under our insurance until June 30th, I believe. But right now, at the State House, they're looking at trying to correct whatever they did to maybe allow notaries to be covered under municipal insurance again. But right now, VLCT, our insurance will not, or the PACAP will not cover her. It's under review, so we've got 4 months to figure out.
Upon renewal of that insurance, she's not covered, but she is covered now.
Right, because we still have it, but as of 1 July, I believe, that then she would not be covered.
Who is her?
anymore. The town clerk.
All right.
Boy, we need to get some bullhorns out here tonight.
Yeah.
Is that good?
Is that good?
Thank you.
You're good.
Yeah.
I got
So-
background noise over here and I can't hear it interfering with my
Yeah.
hearing aid.
What?
The ones at home.
So it's a work in progress. We're hoping to still be able to provide the service, but even the private insurance we weren't able to identify anything there, but we're not going to do anything till the state tries to sort out what they've done and hopefully keep our notaries under the public insurance that we
And
have.
hopefully that'll happen before June 30th.
Correct.
We hope.
Yeah.
Yep.
Have you been in contact with our representatives to push this?
I personally have not.
Should. They're pretty good.
Mhm.
This comes out of the House Operations Committee, I believe, or Government Operations, I'm sorry.
Okay.
John Gagnon, who's the Wilmington rep,
Yep.
is the vice chair of that committee.
Mhm. And that's who Lori has been in contact with, I'm not sure which one, I think I know, but I don't want to say a name because I don't want to put her on the spot, but she has been in touch, and that's why he said don't do anything until we try to get this worked out. So,
So, we're going to recess our select board meeting and convene our informational meeting on the proposed gravel pit purchase.
So
And
I
then-
would-
Then we'll reconvene and finish our regular select board meeting. And there are some exciting things that we still have on our agenda. There's a certificate of no appeal and suit pending from the listers that I'm sure most of you have come and are waiting for. And
So-
I'd just like to announce that I won the, no,
Not
you.
yet.
You
You're a
won.
little, no.
Okay.
I mean, people might come late.
we'll get
Are we
back
not
to that.
counting late people?
Hello.
So do
Okay.
we need to make a motion?
Yes.
to-
Yes, we need a
Okay, so
motion.
I'd like to move that we recess the select board meeting and reconvene after the information meeting.
I'll second that.
Okay, any discussion? All those in favor? All right.
Aye.
Aye. And so.
There's
for-
chairs up here, Josh, for you guys if you'd like.
The ground rules for our informational meeting, if you raise your hand and be recognized, state your name and the town that you are from. Did everyone hear that? Okay, so state your name, Harold, and the town where you're from for our BCTV. And with that, I think, Hugh, you're going to
Yeah, I'll
be the master of ceremonies here?
Did you guys ever get that going?
No, and,
Okay.
did somebody talk to John about getting in touch with Joe Carroll?
Lee, did you get in touch with? Were you talking to somebody about?
Yeah, that person who came down, but then you started your meeting. You want me to go back down there?
Yes,
Yeah.
please.
I mean, she'll be here at 6:30, but we'll try to work around it till we can get that going. The PowerPoint. Yeah. So, okay.
We have, here, how about
Yeah,
I'll
well,
pass it around.
yeah, that's the one. These are the spreadsheets for Dummerston, if anybody does not have one. Or if you'd want to get one from Putney and compare it, I don't know.
Yeah, I have copies of Dummerston.
Josh, do you guys want to? Okay, this is we got a pretty small crowd here to go over this. But I think what we're going to do is we've really kind of got to walk through this just as like we're going to have to read some things. We want to talk about everything because hopefully as this is filmed and people watch this, we'll gather some interest, maybe some additional questions. But I think we kind of got to make, even though it's a small kind of intimate crowd, we're going to try to do this just like we had a packed house. We want to let everybody know. Hopefully they're going to watch on TV and help us out. Okay. So just a couple of things. We'll just do the introduction of the select boards. I'm Hugh Worden. I'm a member of the Dummerston Select Board. If you guys would please introduce yourselves.
Maria Glayback, Dummerston Select Board.
Geraldine Wilson, Dummerston Select Board.
Zeke Goodban, Dummerston Select Board.
Lewis White, Dummerston Select Board.
Steve Head, Putney Select Board.
Laura Chaplin, Putney Select Board.
And Josh Laughlin, Putney Select Board. And this
Karen
is,
Astley, Town Manager, Putney.
And then
Corey.
this is Corey. He's with Stevens and Associates. His firm was the engineer. Their firm ran the engineering when this gravel pit was first opened. And Corey has been working with us as we've gone through this since last August to try to get this everything in order to present to you tonight. So just as we go through, just some things we need to do. It's an informational meeting. One good thing about this is if you have any questions, anything you can bring to us. You may discover something that we haven't thought of, but this is an informational meeting on the 27th of February is the required meeting that meets the statutory requirement prior to town meeting because this is going to be done by an Australian ballot. So we will have another meeting. That won't be a joint meeting. I believe Putney's doing the same thing on the 27th.
Yep.
So any questions you have, you could bring back to your select boards on the 27th at that final meeting that we have. Just some things for tonight. We're going to try to get this PowerPoint going. Corey is going to present some information on the gravel pit. We may have to kind of just swing back around to that until we can get the computer unlocked to do that. And then we're also going to introduce the articles. So we have 3 articles that are going to be that go along with the gravel pit. So I'd like to read those actually, just so they're on the TV, so people can have them. And then as of today, our first of 3 required warnings was in the newspaper, The Commons. And you can actually see a sample ballot, so what you'll see when you go into the voting booth on March 5th, unless you vote early.
Yes.
What else we got? I don't think we're going to go over a lengthy meeting with the crowd we have here, so we won't set that one. If you do ask a question, just please identify yourself and what town that you are from as well. Okay, Corey, I can go on a little further if you want to.
That would be good, because my prompt is my slideshow.
Okay.
So,
Got it.
I would
We'll come
prefer
back.
to have those slides.
All right. So when we do work through this, when we do turn it over to Corey, he's going to go through the history of the gravel pit. He's going to talk about the quantity of it, the method of extraction. He'll give you an update on the permitting status. And he's going to touch on, these are the spreadsheets. Both towns, the dollar amounts on these spreadsheets belong to your specific town. Any drawdown of material would be both towns. So any dollar amount you see, that's just your town's budget. But if you see as you see the material being extracted, then that is both towns' material extraction. So does that make sense? Yes.
Are the town's figures the same?
No.
We'll come back to that. Okay, we'll come back to that, okay? So, and then after, hopefully we get Corey in there, and then I've got some other town comments to go. But with that, you guys mind if I sit down?
I can hear you.
Well, that's kind of why I stood up, because I didn't want to get yelled at anymore. So, we're going to have 3 articles, and is Putney having 3 articles as well on yours? We have the vote, Australian ballot, we have the initial payment, which we're actually probably not going to have one.
We don't
We don't
have
have
that.
that.
Okay, and then we have the interlocal agreement.
Yes.
in there, So,
Yes.
if I trail off, just say something, I'll speak back up. So, the Dummerston voters and the Putney, ours is Article 2?
Ours is Article 8.
8, okay. So what you're gonna walk in, but the verbiage that you're gonna see is exactly the same between the 2 towns. And I'm gonna read this for the folks on the TV, wherever I say Dummerston, just insert Putney, if that's
Right.
okay. Or we can read it twice if you'd like, but you can. So the explanation of the article: the town of Dummerston seeks voter approval to incur bonded indebtedness for the purpose of financing the joint purchase with the town of Putney of 32-acre plus or minus Renault gravel pit in the town of Dummerston for the purpose of extraction of gravel for use in constructing and maintaining their highways and other lawful purposes, for the purchase price not to exceed $2 million, shared equally with each town paying $1 million towards the amount of purchase. The question to be voted on will be as follows, and this is what you'll see in the ballot booth. Shall the general obligation bonds or notes of the town of Dummerston in the amount not to exceed $1 million, bearing the interest at a rate not to exceed 4.25% for a term not to exceed 25 years, be issued for the purpose of purchasing the 32-acre plus or minus Renault gravel pit in Dummerston, Vermont, jointly with the town of Putney? If you're in favor of this, mark the box X. If you are opposed, mark the box no. That will be done by Australian ballot at town meeting day. For Dummerston, Article 3, in the event that Article 2 passes, shall the voters authorize the select board to pay the first year repayment on the bond or notes from the capital fund not to exceed $50,000. And then Article 4, in the event that Article 2 passes, shall the voters authorize the select board to enter into an interlocal agreement with the town of Putney to own and operate the 32-acre plus or minus gravel pit in the town of Dummerston, currently known as the Renault gravel pit, for the purpose of extraction of gravel for the town's use in constructing and maintaining their highways and other lawful purposes. Those are the articles that will be presented at town meeting. Nothing?
Oh,
All right.
I can do my best to wing it using that site plan.
Okay.
I had 8 slides that I think will be valuable.
Well, I could jump
So
into,
what time is it? Are we really expecting the person with the password back here in 5 minutes?
Joe Carroll said she'd be here at 6:30.
Yeah. So I'd just like to say that as far as the history of this is concerned, some of you may know, but Mike Renaud approached Well, initially, I think it came through Lee and/or Brian, sort of alongside. Brian is our highway superintendent in Putney. Mike was interested in selling this parcel to the town.
Make your computer easier to use. Windows will read and scan this list automatically.
I don't think that was the button.
You could hear that.
And and this is a combination of what was initially known as the Moore Pit years ago, which then became the SB Pit, operated by Zaluzny but owned by Tim Severance and somebody else, I can't remember.
Baxendale.
There you go. And then when Mike Renaud bought Hidden Acres, that included an adjacent pit that had not been permitted. The two towns together went in. Mike approached us maybe even before he purchased it, or I think just after he purchased the Hidden Acres, to involve the towns in the Act 250 permitting process and in having a contract with the towns to purchase a certain amount of gravel and sand from him over a certain period of time. Mike, that was developed, and the towns actually, each of the towns put in about $75,000 initially, and this was, probably 8 years ago now, I would guess, to develop, to get the Act 250 permits in place, et cetera. And Mike did all the paperwork in that process, but we did most of the financial support for that. He has since, as most of you know, sold the Hidden Acres campground, but developed a pit that is now known as the Renaud Pit and is accessible from, you go through the ABF truck depot lot to get down into that side of the pit. There is also access from Winterbell Drive, which comes in from the north side, which was the original access to the SB pit and/or earlier on the Moore Pit. But Mike approached the towns. This is a discount price. I have heard rumor, this is strictly anecdotal, I have heard rumor that Mike had been offered more for the pit by larger contractors, but he really wanted the towns to have it to ensure their access to gravel and a sort of sustained supply over time. So just a little bit of history.
No. And picking up on that, so when we were approached, about last August, we were approached to start working on this. So you probably, if you watched the meetings, we talked about this throughout the meetings. It was a real estate deal. We were trying to get everything as close to in order as we could and get it out publicly as soon as we could. And I think we did that publicly in December to try to get the purchase price out, to try to generate some interest in the gravel pit itself. So since then, we've been working with the attorneys for Putney, the attorneys for Dummerston, Stevens and Associates, and then the two select boards. One of the things we did, and when Corey gets up or starts getting, we did a survey to look at how much material was still in the pit, just to have an outside source look at it and give us, we call it a surface survey. Is that, what kind of survey?
We did a site visit, some field measurements.
Okay. And then based on that, once we got that in, then we started really in earnest trying to develop how to go forward. So where we stand right now is between Dummerston and Putney. We have essentially a final purchase and sales agreement, which just outlines the real estate transaction. That will hopefully be inked on the 27th of February, and of course it's contingent upon the votes at town meeting as well. The other thing, what I mentioned in the article, the interlocal agreement that we have to work on, that's kind of the nuts and bolts of how the towns will work together. Now, we've been working together on the Carpenter Pit, which is a sand pit off Route 5, for how long, do you think?
13 years, I would guess.
Yeah.
Something like that.
So I think we have a fairly established record of working between Putney and Dummerston in a joint operation for getting material out. And I think that's worked well. We use that as, even though that's a pretty simplified agreement, we use that as kind of the foundation to build off the interlocal agreement, which is governed by multiple statutes. So the two attorneys have been working on that. We've got our first draft of that. But what that outlines is, how much material we each extract, how we record it, who's going to take care of any reporting requirements that we have, and it's kind of the details of the day-to-day operation of the pit, and then how we reconcile things, as we go down through the years. To include, if one town wants to, get out of the pit, first right of refusal to the other town, and then it can move on. So there's methods of selling the pit if we need to do that. Do you have anything, Josh, on that one? Or Karen, anything?
No, that, you covered it.
Okay.
Thank you.
Do you want to go off that, or you want me to try to keep going?
No, I can start at this point. I booted up my own laptop, so
Okay.
I'm sorry nobody else can see the slides, but at least I can.
Okay. I'm going to turn it over to Corey, and like I said, he's got the history, the quantity, permitting, sequence of extraction, and get from there. Thank you, Corey.
Corey Frazee with Stevens and Associates.
Corey, can you project a little louder, please?
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
You bet. Corey Frazee with Stevens and Associates. I first worked with the towns of Dummerston and Putney on the Carpenter Pit, which is south of what we call the Renault pits, in 2005. And I've been working with the towns on these two gravel pits since 2010. So I've been asked to walk you through some history of these gravel pits. I will introduce some of the material quantities and the spreadsheet, as we call it, which talks about the cost. Those questions should be directed more to the town representatives. And then Lee Chamberlain is here, who's the Dummerston road foreman, who I've talked to and has, we may be asking questions of him with regards to the operation. So I'll try to be brief, walk you through this in 10 minutes, and then you're here because you have questions, which we'll try and get to quickly. So the gravel pits, as they mentioned, are the old Moore gravel pit or SB Lands gravel pit, which is accessed off of Dummerston Station Road, which is shown here, and Winterbell Drive comes into the old Moore pit, and then the Hidden Acres pit, or the Renault pit, is 17 acres of what used to be the Hidden Acres campground parcel. And so I think those are two good milestones for people to get their bearings. The Hidden Acres campground, and then off of Dummerston Station Road. Access to the Hidden Acres pit comes through the ABF trucking facility, which Renault Brothers also owns, but which will not be transferred as part of this sale, correct?
It is transferred. It is in the purchase and sale.
The easement is transferred.
Oh, I'm sorry, the access to
Okay,
it.
so an access easement will be maintained through ABF trucking to access the gravel pits, as well as Winterbell Drive continuing to be an access. The SB Lands, or the Moore pit, is approximately 16 acres, and the parcel that was subdivided off of Hidden Acres, that is the Hidden Acres pit, is approximately 17 acres. The Moore pit goes back decades, as I understand it. That gravel pit, from my observations and from talking to the road foremen who operate the pit, there is not gravel and sand left in that pit. That is primarily a ledge product that's on the old Moore pit. Excavation has started across the common boundary line into the Hidden Acres property somewhat. We focused our efforts on quantity calculations of what remains in the Hidden Acres pit, and I'll walk you through those quantities in a second. Touch briefly on permitting. Both parcels are under Act 250 permitting, which is a state land use permit. Act 250 would remain with the towns purchasing the property. It has requirements on it, conditions associated with it, but it runs with the land. There is not an expiration date. The Moore pit, or SB Lands pit, is permitted for 30,000 yards per year at the state level. The Hidden Acres property is permitted for an additional 30,000 cubic yards per year. There are yearly requirements associated with that Act 250 permit that we have been asked, Stevens and Associates, but the the owners have to, on a yearly basis, review this operation of the pit and make sure that all conditions are being complied with. There's also local DRB or local zoning approvals for both parcels, and as Hugh alluded to, the DRB application was submitted in January, and the decision was recently approved. It's in an appeal period right now for a 50-year extension. That permit initially had a timeline associated with it. A 50-year extension has been approved if the towns purchase the gravel pits. Those two conditions go hand in hand. So there would be a 50-year extension for extraction of material from both of these pits. The needed quantity from each town is 5,000 cubic yards of gravel for Dummerston and 4,000 cubic yards of sand for Dummerston, and then 5,000 cubic yards of gravel for Putney and 4,000 cubic yards of sand from Putney. Again, the Carpenter Pit, which is a little bit south of this, is providing all of the sand. So as we get into the quantities and the cost and the expense for purchasing this property, sand will not be coming out of these gravel pits initially. It'll come out of the Carpenter Pit until there's no sand left in the Carpenter Pit. So quick quantity, the quantity of or materials available. We were hired last fall. We used the historical data that we have from working on the pit over the last 8 years. We also did 2 site visits, took many field measurements, and we came up with the following quantities of material that are left, again, just on the Hidden Acres portion of the property. 4,000 cubic yards of topsoil, approximately 1,000 cubic yards of gravel, approximately 100,000 cubic yards of gravel, 200,000 cubic yards of sand, and 400,000 cubic yards of ledge. In addition to that, when we were at the site, speaking with representatives from Renault, talking to the town road foreman and our own observations, there was approximately 90,000 cubic yards of additional material that was stockpiled around the site. All told, that is 794,000 cubic yards. And due to the information available and the extent of our work, we said that was plus or minus 15%. So there is a range associated with that. We did try to be conservative in those estimates. I know that was a lot of numbers. I think the thing to point out is that there is a lot of ledge on the property. You can see ledge at the surface elevation along the property. There's a ridge, and we did borings in 2010, and so we can see that the ledge slopes off as you go towards I-91, and if we get PowerPoint up and working, I've got a cross section. I can show you that if you have questions. But approximately half the material that we estimate is remaining is ledge, about 400,000 cubic yards. A rough estimate of the ledge on the old Moore pit is 200,000 cubic yards. That ledge is very inconsistent. It's not an easy surface for us to take field measurements and estimate. Many people have taken a crack at estimating what that quantity is. I think 200,000 cubic yards is a conservative number. And this one's going blank now too. So the way that the pit is likely to be utilized by the towns, and again, this comes from conversations with Lee, so Lee, jump in if you want to clarify something. I think I misstep on this one, all right? There will be a strategic approach to utilizing the material so that it, A, is the best product available for the towns to use. There's a combination of materials the town uses. They use large riprap for lining ditches. They use bank run gravel. They use a crushed gravel material for maintaining roads. And then, of course, they use sand in the winter. So there is a crushing of gravel that can happen. There is a screening of sand that can happen. Again, that sand is currently coming from the Carpenter pit, but eventually that operation would move to this pit. We're looking at more than 70 years worth of material. The Carpenter pit has about 12 to 14 years worth of sand left in it. So while it may seem like a long ways away until there's sand here, when we're talking about 70 years, the last 50 plus years, the sand would be coming out of this pit. So the top 15 feet of material on the Hidden Acres property is a good usable gravel, and then we get into sand that isn't well suited for road repairs but would be a good winter sand. In addition to that, we have almost half the material being ledge that slopes off on this side of the pit. So there will be blasting on an intermittent basis. That ledge will be crushed into a material and mixed with the gravel, which will extend the life of the usable gravel for the towns. Anything to add to that? Okay.
The one thing I would add, Corey, is
Yeah.
just that these conversations have also included consistently Brian Harlow
Yep.
in the estimating process and in the extraction
Thank you.
process. So
Yep,
just
that's right. And
hasn't been.
Brian
just-
and Lee met with me
Yeah.
at the site a couple times. So, at risk of getting myself involved in the money part of this conversation, there are spreadsheets available as you walk in, or they are available. They represent the same quantities and costs for Dummerston and Putney. The only difference is when you get into, we call it the tax basis? Okay. So, again, more than 70 years worth of material. There are costs associated with the town operating the pit, hiring a crushing operation to come in and crush the gravel. And those costs will vary based on a couple different things. When the Carpenter pit closes, that operation will move onto this property, and the town will save additional money because they won't be paying the lease, the towns, they won't be paying the lease to the carpenters anymore. The second significant difference in cost is the cost of processing the ledge. So there is a cost associated with blasting the ledge, and initially that ledge will be processed and mixed with the gravel to extend the life of the gravel, but at some point that gravel will go away and the product will be an all ledge product, which in my opinion is going to be more common as the years go by and we start to run out of this important resource. So I think the town is well positioned. Renault is already processing ledge successfully to make gravel on this property because there is such an abundance of ledge on particularly the Moore pit. Like I said, there's not sand and gravels available on the Moore pit at this point. So there is an increase in cost when you go to an all ledge product. Let's see, quick overview. There is also a column, and it says Note 4, Note 5 at the top, and that's the comparison column. That's the budget without purchasing the pit. So that takes into account a continued leased price from Renault, and then at some point, this gravel pit would run out. And it's important to note that together, there's 60,000 yards coming out of this gravel pit every year. And the combined need of the towns is initially 10,000 yards just for the gravel. And then after 13 years, when the Carpenter pit closes, it goes up by the quantity of the sand, and it's a combined 18,000 cubic yards per year. So it's going to last a lot longer. And if the pit isn't purchased, then this pit will close altogether sooner, and you would be buying gravel from another source at a commercial price. It uses a 3% inflation rate, and the significant price jumps are in year 6, I believe it is, 2025. You'll see a price jump. It's highlighted in yellow because it would be an all-ledge product if the pit wasn't purchased and it continued to operate as a commercial pit. And then in 2033, this is a key year because several things happen. The Carpenter pit closes. The sand is estimated to be exhausted out of the Carpenter pit in 2033. And so you will see that the comparison price jumps again, and that cell is highlighted yellow, because it would be a commercial purchase of sand at that point from another source. And you will see that that swings significantly on the net increase or decrease. So that is, I believe, year 14, and that's the year that the town would see the first savings from this project. I'm almost done. That would continue for another, do math in my head, 9 years, and then in 2042, which must be year 23, that's when there is a net gain from the project based on these estimates. So it's 14 years until there's a recognized savings, and then another 9 years until it's a net savings.
Corey, just while you're on that column, the reason that, maybe you already have it, the reason that next one down is highlighted in red, that if the pit stays a commercial operation, that's the year, with the estimates we have, that pit would close. There'd be no more material left in the pit whatsoever if it stays a commercial operation.
Thank you. So I was going to turn it over to Hugh or Josh if you had more detail to go through, but you had a question. Is it okay to take a question now?
I did have a question on this one
Oh,
that's highlighted
can
yellow.
you state your name and
Oh,
the
yes.
town where you're from?
Jody Normando, Dummerston.
I
Jody Normando,
Okay,
Dummerston.
thank you.
Usually I don't have any trouble with anybody hearing me. I was questioning what you said with the jump to 165,000 in yellow in year 14, because we'd be out of sand. But I thought you were saying that we would get the sand from the Hidden Acres pit.
Good clarification. So the Carpenter pit is out of sand. So this column is a comparison column. If the pit, if the Moore/Renault pit is not purchased,
Without purchasing.
right?
Okay.
You would continue to have the Carpenter sand for another 13 years, but then at some point you'd be buying sand commercially.
Okay, so too many columns here.
Yes.
I don't know, we try to make it as simple as we could.
Yeah.
And it's
You
hard.
should have seen my spreadsheet.
So without, to beat that one up, so that big jump, I think that's gonna draw everybody's attention. Actually, Corey, you have more?
No, I'm actually, this is where I was gonna turn it over to
Okay.
you guys for the financial part.
Go ahead,
I
Paul.
had a question for Corey.
Can you
Name?
state your name and the town?
Sorry, Paul Normando from Dummerston. Corey, you mentioned 60,000, I think you mentioned 60,000 yards of bank run gravel, and then the spreadsheet shows 100,000. And I was wondering what the difference was.
Sure.
Besides
No,
30,000.
so, and again, I apologize. I had a slide with my memo that I was hoping to share with you folks. There is approximately 100,000 cubic yards of gravel estimated remaining on the Hidden Acres pit, and that is approximately the top 15 feet. The towns have done some test pits out of the site. The permitted extraction is 60,000. So this, the Moore pit and the Hidden Acres pit are each permitted to take 30,000 yards a year out. So if this stays in commercial operation, the combined extraction rate is 60,000 yards. So if there is 800,000 yards of material left, at 60,000 yards per year, it's about 12 years until that pit is out of material. So that's the 60,000 I was referring to. Does that clarify it?
Would that mean that they'd have to get an extension on the Act 250 permit to get the other 40,000 yards?
No.
No,
they're-
the 100,000 is a total quantity left,
Right.
and the 60,000 is an annual extraction rate.
Right now.
Yes.
So what they're doing,
Okay,
Paul,
okay.
is they're mixing ledge.
All right.
Okay.
I got you. Thank
Yep,
you.
Yep. So what I would think about is, I would add this 100,000 and this 600,000 in ledge,
Yeah.
and you got 700,000 in material that they're, am I right, Lee? They're currently blasting that ledge and mixing it in just like you're talking about doing.
Right.
Yeah, the only thing I would correct about that, Corey, is that they won't be able to continue to pull, because it's 30,000 per permitted pit. So when the ledge on the SB pit was exhausted, they would be limited to taking out 30,000 per year from the Hidden Acres pit or the Renault pit. But that's, you've got 200,000 plus
Yeah.
yards on the SB pit.
People think
so-
I'm low, but
Yeah,
Yep.
so, they'd be able to take 60 out for the next, 7 years-ish, 8 years, and then it would drop to 30,000 a year, but still, in that time frame, it would exhaust that pretty dramatically. The other thing is that, as far as the towns are concerned, one of the most valuable resources for us in the short run is both that sand and gravel that's there, which are sand and bank run gravel, which would be exhausted even more quickly because that's a desirable product at a better price, so that's gonna go out of there faster if he keeps running it as a commercial entity.
And we did project that exact thing in the spreadsheet.
Right.
So,
Yeah. I think actually, Corey, you really hit all the points. I was going to concentrate on the columns off to the right, but just look at your notes on the back. Just don't forget to look at your notes on the back. There's the, as you take this home and look at it, there's the town's use. That's per town, 5,000 yards of gravel, 4,000 yards of sand per year. All dollar costs are for the individual town, but the material shows a combined drawdown. The one column off to the left of the administrative costs, that's for the, that's just a $20 increase a year, but that's for the operation and maintenance, the Port of John. We have several reports that we have to do each year that we plan on doing in-house, and that will be part of the interlocal agreement. And then the question came up yesterday, the reclamation, we already have a reclamation fund, and then money continues to go into the reclamation savings, although understandably the north side of the pit has already been reclaimed, and there really won't be any additional reclamation for potentially 70 years plus on that. The rest of the notes just go down and correspond with the columns, and you can look at those at your leisure when you're home. I'm going to reiterate a couple of the columns. Just at the very top, if you look up about, I don't know, 2/3 of the way to the right, there is a column there that says total budget with purchase of gravel pit, and right next to it says projected budget without the purchase of the pit, and then just to the right of that is the delta. So that's either the increase or the decrease in our town's budget, and this is for Dummerston. So as you can see, you go down to that first if you go under projected budget without pit, you go down to that first highlight that Corey mentioned. That's where the commercial pit would have exhausted all that easily gotten bank run gravel, and they're going to go to a 100% ledge product. And that's why you see that significant jump in the projected budget without the purchase of the pit. If you follow that down to the next highlighted one, that's a 3% increase below that until that next very large jump of the 165,870. That corresponds once again to the Carpenter pit sand being exhausted, and if we had to commercially purchase sand, the estimated cost per yard at that year is $16.15 a yard. So just for town of Dummerston, it'd be the same for Putney. That would be a $64,600 sand budget alone, moving to a commercially purchased sand product. That's why you see that large jump. If you want the math, you just go above that. You have the 118,949. you would subtract, go to your left, and you see the 17,679. That's what's already in our budget. So subtract that from the 118, what you get there, then add the 64,600, and that's how you come up with that budget of 165,000. Then as you go down to the green line, that corresponds to where we have a net, I don't want to call it a profit, what's the right term?
It's a break even, really,
break-
on
yeah,
on
so
the purchase of the pit.
We've paid that, we're broke even on the pit, even though we still have a couple of 3 years left of payments on it. That red box I mentioned earlier, if we do nothing, that's the estimated time that we will be looking for other sources of material, both gravel and sand, which would correspond to additional trucking costs, labor costs. I only used, as we talked about this, that column continues with a standard 3% CPI increase, but honestly, that 216 is probably a low number because we would now be trucking material from an unknown source at this point. So, and then if you look to the right, these numbers, you can see there's tax increases. You'll have additional tax increases for the first 13 years, and then your tax rate is based on today's dollars and today's grand list. Even though it shows an inflation in all the costs, your taxes would start going down. Just know that that tax is only predicated on highway material, nothing else, just highway material. So don't think that everything's going to go down automatically for you. This is just the material budget. Okay. So I'm going to let me hit a couple more things, and then we'll open to questions. But so as we looked at this, and I know when we first brought this up in the board, we heard that dollar amount. There was a lot of deep breaths taken. But as you start really breaking this down to the cost, and if you look at the material available in this gravel pit, we're trying to ensure a couple things. We can stabilize our budgets because we own the material. We're no longer subject to market increases. And as Corey mentioned, he thinks ledge products are going to become, I guess, more prevalent. I guess we are establishing our own source for not only us, but for whoever comes behind us in this town. We're looking towards the future, I believe. We have, 52 miles of dirt road that we're going to continue to maintain. I don't think we're going to lose any of that road, and I don't think we're going to pave that road. Nobody can see the future, but we're establishing a source to ensure that our town in Putney has the material they need to take care of their stuff. We talked about, if you were here for the select board meeting, we talked about that municipal road permit. As we go through our town, we're going to have significant erosion areas where we need to start getting ditch stone, which is very expensive, to start putting into these roads to come up in compliance with the state permits. We're going to own that material. We're going to blast it. They can pick the size of rock that you need to put into the ditches. Is that correct?
Yes.
And then you can ditch it. So that's another unknown cost yet because we have not done our road survey. And I can't predict how many miles of road we're going to have to ditch line with stone, but it's going to be an expensive endeavor to come up with as we go through this. You got the 15-year recognized budget savings, and then 23 years to see the net savings on it. So going forward, so we'll take this to the please, we didn't get a large crowd, so I hope we've kind of shown you the wisdom of this, but you got to spread the word for us and help us out because it's hard to get the word out on what we're doing. And if you just show up, in the polling booth and you're not really sure what's going on, I don't know. You're going to be like, oh, those guys were smart and they were taken out, and you're going to say yes, or you're going to be like, that's a big number, and I'm going to say no. So I'm hoping you're going to be the former if you show. We have the purchase and sales we talked about. We should be finalizing that on the 27th if you come to the next meeting prior to town meeting. The interlocal is in the initial draft. And then if these 3 articles for Dummerston and 2 for Putney pass, then the steps forward of that are we retain the bonding attorneys. And it's a very in-depth, so nothing's guaranteed just yet, but once we have the voter approval, then we can go to the bonding agencies, attorneys to establish our package, establish hopefully our credit, And then that will be presented to the bond bank, and they'll make a decision. And ideally, we would close this in the month of August, take possession of it, and then start recognizing the savings that we've hopefully presented to you tonight. So, Josh, do you have anything from?
I would just add that as far as that not being a sure thing with the bond bank, the attorney for the bond organization has reviewed this
Yes.
also and has approved of how it has been presented
Yeah.
by our attorneys. So, as Hugh said, there's no guarantee, but we have taken the proactive steps of presenting it to the people who would be reviewing it in the future, and they have said, yes, this is done properly. So they could turn us down, but it seems, at that point, it seems like it would be pretty unlikely. I don't
Yes.
know.
Jody Normando, Dummerston. I know that we all spent this $75,000 or whatever it was each. And Corey, you mentioned something in your spiel about, for that, we had the right to purchase the gravel. Now, does that mean that we got our 75,000 or whatever it was back in the price that we were paying for the gravel? Or just the right to purchase it at their price?
Speak to that.
We got a discounted price.
You have it discounted?
Yes.
And have enjoyed that discount for whatever it's been, 7 years now, 6 or 7 years. I personally have not seen the numbers on that, Jody, as far as where we came out on that. But the price that we've been paying for gravel from the Renaud pit is significantly discounted. And even if this pit were to sell to somebody else, that price would be carried with the pit until the pit is exhausted of the material that we would want to purchase from them.
The discounted
The
price?
discounted price.
Well, Lee, do you want to address that discounted price?
Yes, we do get a discount on it right now.
Yes.
And when the material changes from gravel to ledge, of course,
Exactly.
the price goes up.
Yes.
But it's still discounted from other towns purchasing
So
material.
we'll still be guaranteed that discount?
Even if somebody else purchased it, but if somebody else purchased it, it's going to be exhausted much quicker, as
Yeah,
we've talked about.
because they sell
So,
commercially.
Exactly. So, I don't know that we've recouped that full 75,000. What it did is it gave us a guarantee of a good price over a certain period of time. I don't know, that's an interesting question. I will try and find
Yeah,
out.
because
we're pretty
with that, plus the $2 million, it seems like an awful lot of money being spent, and that's my concern. So that's why I asked that question.
Yeah, I think we need to dig that a little more, because we had a very good price after we opened the gravel pit with the permitting, but as that product has gone to a mixed ledge product, our pricing that we're paying is much closer to a commercially purchased. So I think our advantage is less now, significantly less than it was.
And
when
the
we
first
opened
5
the
years,
pit.
we had a.
Right, we had a guaranteed price for 5 years,
And then it went
which
up.
was significantly discounted. And now we're almost up to a commercial price.
What is the commercial price?
It's 10 and change right now?
1050 is what we're paying right.
We started out.
1050 is what we're
We
paying,
are
but if
paying.
but if we were to go to Cold River, for example, in Walpole, closer to 14, I think.
Yeah, probably.
Somewhere.
I don't even think they have gravel up there anymore.
Sir Sosimo.
One
had
of
it.
my slides was
Yeah.
Sir Sosimo's rate sheet, so I can pull that up if you'd like to know.
It just, yeah, I'm interested.
Initially, I think we were paying $350 a yard.
A yard.
Yep, plus.
That was
plus
just for
the
straight
crushing.
bank run, I
Yeah.
think.
Oh,
plus
Right,
you were
exactly.
crushing?
Yes.
Yes.
Crushing. So it would be like 750, no, 8.
Which brings me to the question of why aren't we crushing anymore ourselves?
Because they are having to mix. It's one thing when you just take it out of the bank and put it in the crusher, but they have to bring it from all areas of the pit to make the gravel. And that's where you get the
And
increase.
we haven't crushed ourselves for a long time. The towns of Putney and Dummerston used to own a crusher
Yes.
together. I want to say it was before we even opened the Carpenter pit or about the time that we opened the Carpenter pit, that crusher lived its useful life and had to be gotten rid of. So we haven't been crushing stone for a long time. The other thing is that just the nature of the material that you're crushing in this yard compared to, it's one thing to take bank run and run it through a crusher. You only need to be able to run stuff up to 4 inches or whatever, and it crushes it. When you're blasting ledge and then crushing it, you're taking big aggregate and smashing it down to teeny little pieces, and it's much more expensive. It goes from $4 or $5 a yard for bank run crushing to more like $10 a yard for ledge crushing. That's my recollection. But
$12.50 is a comparable price for crushed gravel
okay.
at a commercial pit.
That's crushed gravel in the pit.
Yep, that's right. Still have to truck it.
Exactly. So, for example, with Sosimo, that pit is located.
Oh, I'm sorry. They have 4 different ones.
Yeah.
It's the same price. Yeah.
But any one of them is
That's
at
right.
least a 10-mile
Vernon.
Down to
travel
Westchester.
for us, exactly.
Vernon would probably be.
Yeah, I mean, Zaluzny has a pit in Brattleboro also, which we could purchase from, but same, I would guess it's the same price. The one other thing I wanted to comment on is that the ledge, and this is not that important for us, well, in some ways it is, but that ledge has all been certified by the state to be used for the purposes that we want to be able to use it for. There are certain types of ledge that would not pass that certification. For example, this project that's going to be coming up where we have to improve our drainage on all our roads, we would have to use state certified riprap in order to do that. This material is certified for that purpose. Otherwise, we'd have to be going to somebody who was getting their material certified in order for us to be able to use it. So just an additional sort of benefit of this material having been approved for that purpose.
Claudia Teachman, Dummerston. So you're hoping that the purchase goes through, if everything gets voted on, et cetera, by the end of August. Between now and but you're quoting available materials in the pit, what's available now. Is there a cap on what Renault can pull out before August? Because he could pull
Well-
his 60,000 yards out by August.
Well, I'm not sure that's a good question. I'm not sure whether it's an annual draw, you're right, but I'm not sure whether he's limited to a monthly quantity. That's also the 2 pits. So, yes, potentially he could take 60,000 yards out of there between now and August if it's not a monthly thing. We have a sort of reasonable gentleman's agreement that he's not going to go crazy on it, but we can't.
I think there is a limit on trucks.
Per
week
period
or
of time.
Per
Yeah.
day, so.
So it probably wouldn't get to the 60 between, you're only in month 8 of the
But the
calendar year.
that's quoted here could be significantly
There's 90,000 yards of stockpiles, which is probably what he would be drawing on. So
And that's not counted in this?
it's a different, I believe that's a different note, isn't it, Corey, on your sheet? Or did you add that in?
Corey, that 90.
Oh, I'm
This-
looking at your spreadsheet, because.
I just used
Your
the.
spreadsheet does not include the
It does
90,000
not.
that's stockpiled.
No, I didn't put that in there because I didn't know what he would be doing. Now, our agreement, our purchase and sales agreement, it's worded that no new contract, once we sign it, this is why I want to sign it, he can't enter into anything new. He can run it as an established operation in past practice. So whatever he's been drawing, he could do that. He can't like now make a run for, in theory, he can't make a run for the 60,000 by August if he's not on track to do that.
And the signed,
Well, we want.
has to be after March, after town meeting?
No, we can sign the purchase and sales prior to that. We have the legal authority to sign that, but it would become null and void if the voters didn't vote it down. But we have the ability to enter into an intended agreement with him. That's why we're trying to get it taken care of. We're at the final version of it, but once we ink that, then we've kind of established the path forward to get us to the final closing.
And that agreement contains the easement across the ABF property?
It allows us, I probably misspoke, it allows us access through ABF trucking, yes. Yeah, it's in there. That was It was a point, Mike was very good about that, he and I talked a couple times, and he agreed to include that in there. So, yeah. Gene?
Jean Newell, Dummerston. I'm just checking to see if you had a professional appraisal done.
Other than the material, that's what we've had done. We've looked at how much material. You can look at the sand alone, based on the value of it, is worth more than we're paying for the pit.
I just know what those 34 acres are, 33 acres are appraised at now.
That's the lister's appraisal, but the value of the material in there is much higher than what we're being.
So, do you have something like that in your purchase and sale agreement
Is how,
about the quantity in there, or is that just dollar amounts?
no, there's nothing in the purchase and sales on quantity. I mean, that's why we had an outside source come in and provide us with that kind of a separate, we had the road foreman's estimate on it, but we brought the engineering firm in to look at the materials so we could then kind of do the business plan and the cost analysis of owning the pit and comparing if we were buying commercially sourced material or if we own the material. So as far as an appraisal on the land, we didn't do that. I'm looking at the material we're going to extract from the pit and the value of that. That's where the value of the 32 acres came.
I mean, you know why I'm asking, because when this happens in the listers department, is something going to change. How is that going to work?
Well, I guess when the listers, because the buildings are going to stay with.
Right,
Yeah,
yes,
so
but the
we're-
appraisal, there is an appraisal on the land
Yep.
itself.
And then once we get that appraisal and the listers determine the appraisal of that, and then we determine the tax rate, the Dummerston voters are going to absorb half of that.
I know that.
And Putney is going to get a tax bill for the other half of it.
Mhm. But what that appraisal will be on is to be seen.
But it should be less than it is now.
Yeah, I think you're.
It should be a lot less than it is
We
now.
can't put an appraisal on it of $2 million.
No.
No,
We
it should,
expect that, because you can't do that.
it should be
Right.
appraised for
But-
significantly less than it's appraised for now.
I mean, we're gonna have to get some help
Sure, it's a
from
hole in the ground right now.
Yeah,
advisors.
and we would appeal that if you did.
Oh, dear, better not sign that paper then.
Yes.
I think I was
Can you
reading-
say your name and town?
Oh, Suzanne Weinberg, Dummerston. I think I was reading between the lines that a different company is going to come in to do things like the blasting and the crushing and stuff like that. Is that a correct, did I hear that
Yes.
correctly? So is it also fair to assume that there's not going to be more wear and tear on any Dummerston or Putney machinery or vehicles or things like that than there already is now?
Lee, do you want to
And
address
if
that?
there is, has that been taken into account in the costs?
We think we've covered that, but Lee, do you
I
want to?
believe we can do it with our equipment we have now, and on our regular rotation of our equipment.
So it won't
It's-
so there won't be more fuel costs or more wear and tear?
Right, there might be a little bit more loader cost, but you'll save that on the truck-in if you had to go somewhere, it kind of offsets.
I have one other question, can I do two?
Just clarify about that. As it is now, the towns currently use their own equipment for the carpenter pit. We use our own equipment, the two towns share sometimes depending on convenience. So we're already using our own town equipment for basically half of the operation that's done in a pit anyway. So this would shift that equation, but I think the offset in my mind would be less trucking distance. So you might be using more equipment a little bit more often in the pit, but you're not going to be driving your trucks back and forth to another pit in order to. So that would be an offset for that. But it's hard to account for that exactly, so, but we have considered
But
it.
the blasting and that stuff is.
Contracted,
something else,
yeah.
And the other question I have might be more appropriate for later, but it's about, this is pretty complex, and like you said, when people go in the voting booth, there's not a chance to ask questions. And it seems like you've thought it through really well. I'm really impressed with the presentation. So I'm really concerned that how is the information going to get to voters?
Yeah,
I mean, I
that's-
hate to see you go to all this work and then,
Yeah.
you know, people just don't know, so they go blindly into it.
You know, I've faced that. I think we've all faced that. It's a very difficult way to get information out. And we initially, you know, we had the Commons, but we lost our reporter for Dummerston, so we had some avenues to do it. We're hoping this will, you know, get in the published print. I don't know. That's a good question. We've been trying to figure that out, and I don't have an answer how to get engagement from everybody.
Is there an article in the Views?
There will be an
that's coming
article in
out
the
before
Views.
town meeting?
Yes, it does.
Yes.
It'll come out the end. In fact, we're folding it next week, so it'll come out.
Yeah, we were hoping to get out to talk about this meeting, but I got feedback that it wouldn't be published till after this one, so it's going to refer to this meeting in the past tense, I believe, is how they did it.
Yeah.
We also, Karen, contacted the former and asked them to specifically cover this. They couldn't have somebody here tonight, but they are going to review the tape and do an article, hopefully, based on that.
If one town says yes and the other says no, then
It's a no.
Leaves it, yeah, in limbo. We've talked about that. We don't have a solution for that issue.
Just, yeah, I guess, in detail, we've looked at the trucking. Like, if we don't purchase this, and we use Vern as an example, it's essentially a half a man year and a half a truck year. So whether we could do that in the amount with the crew we have, or if we'd be hiring people, it would take 6 months of a man and a truck to haul all the material we need to bring from Vernon. A person in a truck. I thought pronouns could be like either way, but okay, I'm out of there. A person in a truck, 6 months to haul the material to the town. So that would be a cost increase if we.
For
did
each
all
town.
this.
That's for each town.
And that we used Sir Sosimo and Vernon as the distance round trip on that. So, and he had a dollar figure with that. I don't remember off the top of my head, but. it was
The other
much-
thing that, again, anecdotally, but we have not been able to accurately predict, is that this is a hugely fossil fuel-driven industry. So, you know, having local access, you know, if the price of fuel doubles, all those estimates that we have for outside purchase of material are going to go much higher. There's no way to know where we're headed on that, but.
Paul?
Paul Namando again. Did I do that okay, Zeke?
Yes, we're going to assume you're still from Dummerston.
I want to personally thank Hugh and Lee for allowing me to sit with them yesterday to go over some of this, and it helped bring things into focus for me. And one of the things that it focused for me is that the people with gray hair in the community are the ones who are going to be paying for this for the next 14 years, so that the town can benefit thereafter. And, you know, I think we ought to acknowledge and thank the people with gray hair.
I got a few there,
Zeke
Paul.
or no.
Yeah, exactly.
Either one. Yeah.
You've got all these figures for what you're gonna take out, and that's based on what basically you use now. Have you ever stopped and considered conservation and using less and letting it last longer?
I would defer that to the road foremans on how they take care of the roads, because,
I don't mind the ditches in mud season.
State
Yeah.
mandated.
well, that we have no control
Yeah,
of.
but I don't mind any of that, the
Yeah.
dirt roads, I mean,
Yeah.
I think the main roads need to be taken care of,
Yeah.
but I think that we could do some conservation and do with less, maybe, in order to make it last longer. Just passing that on.
Yeah. Any
I
chance?
know, you're laughing.
No.
Safety first. Okay. Yeah. No,
Yeah,
it's
no,
acceptable, yeah.
I think you're right, though, Jody. I mean, I think that part of that is that people's expectations
I know.
are, I mean, I got a call the other day from somebody because their road hadn't been plowed on the morning that it snowed, and I was like,
Well, heck, they
I'm
called
sorry.
school 2 days
Yeah,
ahead of time, come on, they never did that.
I know, no. It's a very different atmosphere that we're in as far
I
as
know.
people's expectations of sanding and maintenance all around, and I think you're right. We could all pay attention to that.
Well, we did,
definitely.
for a long time, we were just sanding the hills, for example, in a period of time. And that kind of makes sense if you've got a big hill to do something like
Yeah.
that. But to pour sand on the whole road only makes more mud in the
Very
spring.
expensive.
So we did get the computer going, and if people would
Yes.
like, Corey could go through his 8 slides, and that way they'd be on the television. So I think if there aren't more significant questions, we could do that.
Now a good time for that? I'll be much quicker this time, I promise. This is just a locust map showing a larger area of Dummerston, I-91, Route 5. Here's Dummerston Station Road, Winter Bell Drive, which comes into what we call the old Moore Pit. And this is the Hidden Acres campground property, and this is the area of the Hidden Acres pit. The Carpenter Pit is just off the page. It is accessed off of, is that Carpenter Road there?
Carpenter Road.
Yeah. That's the same aerial photograph I was pointing to on the board. For the people at home though, I'll leave that up on the screen for a second. The purple is the access points. There's the ABF trucking facility with the easement that will be maintained through that property to access the gravel pit. This is a little more of the history. This was the area that we identified for extraction. Some of these slides are from my presentation to the town in 2011. You will see on the next few slides, these are what we call proposed contours, and so as I click through these, you'll see how the excavation goes south across the property line, and then that's the finished condition of the pit. I'll go back to this one for a second, because that kind of represents approximately where the pit is today. The access road comes through ABF and circles down onto the floor of the pit. This knob of ledge is still here in some capacity, and then excavation has crossed the common property line, and the equipment is set up on the floor of the pit on the Moore side, and some of the excavation is happening on the Hidden Acres campground side of the pit. That's a pretty color picture that tells the story in a different way. This is actually an old slide when excavation was just going to be contained on the Hidden Acres property, but that is the area of extraction. This is my memo. I'll run through this really quick again for people that are watching on TV. We did a couple site visits, took a lot of field measurements, and used the old survey data that we had from both the Moore Pit and the Hidden Acres campground. And total volume was estimated at 794,000 cubic yards. Again, due to the effort we put in and the opportunity for error, we said it was plus or minus 15%. Topsoil 4,000 cubic yards, gravel 100,000 cubic yards, sand 200,000 cubic yards, ledge 400,000 cubic yards, and then the stockpiles that we were discussing a minute ago, about 90,000 cubic yards observed on the SB land or Moore land property. So ledge is estimated at just about half of the remaining material. Again, that's only the material that's on the Hidden Acres pit. It was difficult to estimate the amount of ledge on the old Moore or SB lands pit, but we did estimate roughly 200,000 cubic yards. It's a very inconsistent surface. It was very difficult to take field measurements and estimate that. So in the spreadsheet that we were discussing, that 200,000, it has been added to that 400,000, so you will see that in the spreadsheet. That 90,000 of stockpiles is not in the spreadsheet. This is a cross-section just to give you an idea of how we estimated the gravel, the ledge, and the sand product. So this is just a cross-section through the middle of the pit that we did as part of our permitting in 2011, 2012. So this is the existing ground, and as you know, the existing ground, there's a steep slope off to I-91. And I apologize, but this is an exaggerated scale, and I didn't want to redo a cross-section. It would have taken hours to do. So this is much wider, but we adjust the scale so it'll fit on one page. The red line is approximately what we believe the cross-section of ledge is. So the ledge is poking out of the ground and the ridge between the campground and the pit, and then it tapers off, and we went down 60 feet and never found ledge, so that red line kind of disappears. So this is the proposed floor of the pit, and then the top 15 feet, based on test pits that the town has done with Renault, is estimated to be gravel. This remaining pit is, should we say, gravelly, sandly? It's primarily a sand, so the town anticipates using it primarily for road sand. There are the spreadsheets, and I don't imagine that you can probably see that, but do you want to try and zoom in? No.
Okay. Those sheets, the spreadsheets are available in your town office in either
Right.
Putney or Dummerston,
Right.
if you're interested.
This is just history in case we got into questions. So, that was essentially the 8 slides I wanted to discuss. That prompt any more questions?
Yes.
Yes.
Did I hear you say when you were over there that the SV, is it the SV pit, was already reclamated?
It's partially reclamated, yep, as a requirement of the permits. As they've extracted from the north to the south, they have done partial reclamation.
So what's left to do?
Lee, can you speak to that?
It would be the floor.
Just the floor? Not any of the steep banks or anything like that?
Right, they've done that.
Because there's houses that sit right on top of it.
Yeah.
Right.
It's surprising, I don't know whether you've been down in there, Jody.
Not
but
down in,
It's
no.
surprising that that whole SP area is pretty flat-ish now. I mean, there are ledges, there are slopes going up, but they're eased both by reclamation, but also by the fact that the high points were all lowered. It's much more noticeable in the Hidden Acres portion of it where it hasn't been worked on. But the SB portion of it really is, it's pretty much like a bowl now. I mean, it's
So there's not much
left
left
to do with
for
it. No.
Putney and Dummerston to be responsible for?
Right.
One other thing I want to just draw people's attention to is down in year 35 over, there's a yellow spot on almost in the third column from the left, the fourth column from the left, re-permit for sand. There's a potential for us to, that floor, pit floor, where we are now in the SB pit and would be in the Renault or Hidden Acres pit over time, is established by the water table and where it wants to be, or in theory, where the water table could be. It's possible that in the future, we could adjust the height on that table, and I just punching numbers figured that we were looking, if we were to go down roughly 15 feet more, that would provide us with another 150 to 200,000 yards of primarily sand and gravel material. So that's something that we don't intend to do anytime soon, but it's a way that at some point we could gain more
If it stops raining.
material. Well, apparently the water table is way down lower than they anticipated, so it
Oh.
seems like it wouldn't likely be an issue. But
Would that be a re-permitting issue?
that would be
An amendment.
amendment to the Act 250 permit, that's what it would be.
And that's why they're on that, where Josh has pointed out, we put a dollar figure in. You know, who knows what it's gonna cost at that point, but we tried
Not
to
to be around.
we tried to identify that was gonna be a need, and just, show.
Yeah, we'll ask that question at the next meeting.
Anything
Shut
else?
it down.
Any other questions from the floor?
Zeke's gonna relay one from me.
Can I close this though, so it's?
If you have your spreadsheet in front of you, and you're wondering what this, if this is approved by voters, what you might expect for an increase in your taxes, you can look on the right-hand side, and I think Putney also?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. You can find the approximate value of your home, and then go down that column and you'll see what to expect for an increase in your taxes for the gravel pit purchase.
Initial increase and then a
Yeah.
decrease.
Okay,
in
yes,
years,
then a
but-
decrease. The red represents a decrease.
Yeah. And just, once again to clarify, that is only based on the highway material budget, nothing else.
It really jumps.
But it's not a cumulative thing, it's
No,
not.
It's every year
In
is
other
a
words, not
standalone.
Like in the $100,000 column,
Mhm.
it's not $23 in
There is
addition to
no
the $597.
No, everything's based on the
That's an
yearly.
annual projected
Right.
Yeah,
change.
It's all based on that yearly budget increase or decrease, so every year is a standalone year for
Why
that
the
year.
big jump from 597 to 23?
Half a year.
Look at the
year.
the first year is initially a interest payment,
Oh, I see, okay.
and then you can see the big drops coincide with the material changes cost if we didn't buy the pit.
Huey, is that considering taking off what we're paying presently?
Yep.
That's been subtracted from it?
That has been subtracted from it. Yep. So that,
So that 50,000 that's spent yearly now is been
that's
deducted.
incorporated. So that's why there's a delta. That's why if you look under note 6, yearly projected budget increase or decrease, that would be, that's compared to our budget now, to what our budget would be if we don't buy or don't buy the pit. And it incorporates a reduction, because we already have money budgeted, so that's figured into our current cost.
Sir, what was your name? And what town are you from with the camera, please?
Did you hear it?
No, I didn't hear your name.
Does anybody have anything else, or we're ready to close the information meeting? Josh?
I want to say thank you all for coming. As to your question, I don't remember your name, even though I think you stated it, but get the word out if you can, please. We're trying, but you know, a letter to the editor would be great, something like that. But I also want to say thank you to Hugh. He has sort of spearheaded this on Dummerston's side and been a very valuable asset in this whole process.
That's why he's retiring.
There you go. Yeah. And then I also just want to say thanks to Mike, because Mike has been a willing participant in the discussions, you know, seemingly very generous in his approach to us and how it's all been going. And that's been, this is now the third project I've worked on Mike with over time in my role on the select board. And he consistently has been just very straight shooter and really great to work with, so we appreciate that, definitely.
Well, if you're getting too much.
All right. Thank you very much, everyone. We're going to end this, and we're going to go back into our select board meeting.
Okay. All right, I'd like to move that we reconvene our select board meeting.
Second it.
Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right, so we're back in business here. Under new business, we have a certificate of no appeal or suit pending from the listers. This just certifies to the state that we have no appeals pending from the actions of the listers. So, what would you like to do?
I'll make a motion, we certify the no appeal.
Okay.
I'll second that.
All right, any discussion?
So tell us about it.
The listers have to send this into the state, just to let them to state to the state that we have no appeals or suits pending relating to the 2018 grant list. We have any other discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
All right.
We all sign this.
That, let's see. All right, and then we have no gravel pit update?
I think we're good with the gravel pit
Okay,
update.
all right, just wanted to check. We did get the school playing fields that we've been discussing with the school board. The purchase and sale and the lease, we sent to Bob Fisher for his review. He had made some comments, sent it around to the school board members and to all of you. Most of the changes had to do with just correcting the year.
Yeah.
So he had no further comments other than he thought it was a good idea, is actually what he said. So, so that's, the school board's going to have their public hearing towards the last week of the month, and then they'll come back to us and see if we'd like to buy the fields and lease it back to them. So, anybody have any other thoughts on that, or any other business?
Make a motion to adjourn?
Do I have a second?
I'll second that.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.